But for these rural communities, this is how they get in and out of town. Now, for Bella and I, the Canadian is our vessel to appreciate the natural beauty of Canada, regardless of this being her first trip and my 11th. But for the 190 of the 200 scheduled stops on board, this train is a lifeline for those communities. And I mentioned it in episode 1 of this series, but when the Canadian government axed the entire southern route in January of 1990, leaving towns like Revelstoke, Field, and Thunder Bay completely serviceless, it basically made their only option of transportation to get a car or to pay the absurd prices that Canadian Airlines are charging today. Now, I mean, you could technically drive up to Armstrong, Ontario and board the train from there, but that kind of defeats the purpose. And listen, I get it. They cut the route well before I was even born, but the Canadian passing along the shores of Lake Superior on what seems from the archives to look like an ocean if you didn't know any better, it makes me shake my head a little bit, to be honest, because it's becoming more and more apparent to me that most of the decisions made in Ottawa and the VRL HQ in downtown Montreal are super out of touch with the everyday Canadians out west, from moving passenger service out of downtown cores in Saskatoon and Edmonton to the middle of nowhere, or even in Kamloops, where the new station is a shack in the middle of an active freight yard. And to not be servicing communities with the biggest populations like Thunder Bay or Canada's 4th largest city in Calgary with over 1.5 million people and a direct line to the Rockies and Banff and Lake Louise, capitalizing off huge tourism numbers that are there in the summer, where they have well over 50,000 cars a day pass through Banff and 30,000 through the village of Lake Louise, and would also drastically cut down the travel time from Winnipeg to Toronto simply by going south. And my goal for pointing this out isn't to be negative, but to grow awareness for what could be great in Canada, with a little bit of political willpower and a sprinkle of common sense at the top level. But like I mentioned in Edmonton, the fact that Canada still has passenger service today, long distance service heading west, is kind of a miracle at this point, especially after Via Rail ran a $500 million deficit last year. But let me know in the comment section what you think and how they could make service more attractive for everybody in Canada, not just east of Toronto. Now, by late afternoon, we were approaching our next major refuel and fresh air stop, crossing this bridge over Pelican Lake and into the town of Sioux Lookout, home of the Sioux Bombers junior hockey team, with a population of around 5,000 people and named in honor of its high vantage point that enabled the Sioux tribe to spot enemy tribes in the distance many moons ago.